So 2024 has been a lot to unpack for multiple reasons. We had the revitalization of not only West Coast hip hop, but the art beef itself. We had the NBA on TNT deal potentially falling through, and the Sonic 3 movie is supposed to come out in a few months, among other things. Obviously, all things to be extremely worried about. In all seriousness, as I've gotten a bit older, it's interesting how every 4 years or so is seen as the sort of de facto transitional period, where the significantly more chaotic events have us reflect on not only our personal lives, but how culture as a whole shifts. It's also the 1 year where music is suspiciously better, but that's neither here nor there. However, one of the biggest events to take place was the Olympics, where athletes from across the globe go to Wait, what? I'm not explaining what the Olympics are. Admittedly, I wasn't really paying any mind to the events for the most part. Not for any particular reason, I was just focused on doing something else. At least up until a few weeks ago. July 24, I had the radio on while driving to the store and Angela Yee's show was playing. And as I'm on the main road, I get hit with a triple whammy of what I can only describe as a numbing reminder of the place I have in the States. Another Tuesday for us type B. However, the last story specifically had me let out a sigh from the deepest depths of my soul.
And speaking of playing for USA, a lot of people were disappointed by Gilbert Arenas' comments when our team did just barely win. I think it was 101-100 against South Sudan. And they posted some of Gilbert Arenas' remarks on TikTok. Here's what he said.
Now, other than the championships or the occasional RDC skit, I haven't really paid attention to the NBA ever since the D Rose incident. I can never look at basketball the same. But this odor, this stench of disrespect reminds me of a similar situation that happened to a Browns player a few months ago. And that situation reminded me of a trend way back in 2021. And one of the biggest consequences in all these situations is the type of conversation that stem from other black people participating, and this needs to be addressed. I've gone on record in the past saying that I like offering positive or neutral perspectives on situations, and while that's still very much true, I have to make a few exceptions. So in this video, I want to analyze these three situations, point out the various patterns, and hopefully point out the true cause of animosity between communities. And I also got an interview from my best friend to get a different perspective on the topics I'll be covering.
Ian Thorough, CEO, founder of Thorough Made It. Follow me on Instagram at Thorough Made It. Just a young African kid living in America, young African artist living in America.
So without further ado, let's get into it. So I wanted to start up with something a few years ago that spawned from TikTok. Hopefully this is the last time I talk about the app extensively, as I'm not a big fan of watching short form content in general. But back in 2021, being indoors for certain world events, I was heavy on TikTok just like everybody else, and that included keeping up with the trends. So early in that year, the app saw the rise of the Fufu Challenge, where people from all around would go to African restaurants, whether local or not, to try fufu out. Now, fufu is a staple in West Africa, and at least in Ghana, we use cassava in either plantain or yam. It depends on the country, really. Now, this sounds harmless. A bunch of people are trying food from a different culture, and various local businesses get a rise in traffic. So, what's the issue? Well, if you had the app back then, you'd remember that what was once a welcoming haven for expanding your food experience devolved into some of the most nonsensical behavior on the app. Let me show you some of the things people did. People in the videos would go out spamming puke emojis, call the food stanky, dirty, this, that, and the third, chew on fufu after explicitly being told not to. This gets on my nerves so bad. But most glaringly spit the food right out on camera, and we'll get to this guy in a bit. Now, I know some people will say, hey, if they're not used to it, they don't have to like it, and I 100% agree. There's so many different factors pertaining to your taste preferences, from your age to simply your environment. Taste buds can change as often as every 10 days. But these reactions, it's a little more than a bad kid with no manners, and that's not the last time you'll hear me make this comparison. But unlike a kid, most of these people are adults with free choice and money to not be acting like this on camera. Let's get back to this guy though. Now, this clip is actually one of the reasons I decided to make this video, more specifically Yao Kanadu's reaction to it. And this guy proceeds to follow up with a two-part apology. Now, I don't care about the formalities or anything, so let's skip to the main points he makes. He explains his dislike for the food, describing the texture as too doughy, and getting someone to break down that different countries like Ghana and Nigeria make it in different ways. He just didn't like Ghana fufu. He explains this with a sense of decorum and respect that he could have had instead of brushing your tongue with your fingers. This explanation brings me back to the upbringing point. Like I established before, fufu is made differently across West Africa, and he wasn't aware of that. That's why doing research into these things is very important, or more effectively asking a friend that's actually a part of said culture. There are a few videos of people chewing on fufu after being warned not to, but I've seen some people in these videos not even fathoming the idea of not chewing certain foods. That concept is very foreign to them. Fufu can be had with tilapia, goat meat, and peanut butter soup, ingredients some would naturally be allergic to if not already uninduced. Not only are these valid concerns to take a look into, but there can be further clarification from someone within the culture that knows you and your tolerances. In 2024, we're still having the jollof conversation, even though Ghana's better.
Last question. Nah, Mar's gonna be hot at this, bro. You already know what it is. Which one? Which one? Which one, bro?
I can't say that. If I marry a girl from Ghana, well, that'll be the answer. If I marry a girl from Nigeria, that'll be the answer. That's what I'm saying.
Fine.
There's no way all fufu tastes the same. I think the most frustrating thing about this trend is the price hiking as a result. Price in demand, yeah, but when you have an influx of customers buying for the social media reaction, if not wasting the food entirely, it sucks to have a staple food in your household suddenly become less obtainable, only to find out that it's partially due to customers with no desire or respect for the culture.
Two things can be true at once. It's good because more black owned and African owned businesses are getting more business, and that's generating more black wealth for people. But at the same time, whenever you are not of a culture and you go to participate in another culture, respect is mandatory. Like, I felt some type of way when I was seeing people who are not African go and buy fufu and go on TikTok and spit it out just to try and get views off of disrespecting people. Like, that's not okay at all. So both things are true, and yeah, that's all I can say. Both things are true.
When I first started scripting this section, a Soren Kortrizzi video popped in my head immediately. It was the second part of her video on America's Next Top Model, and she shows this clip of Yaya de Casa in 2004. Not only getting shamed for her fit on live television, but painting it as defensive for explaining why she didn't go for the traditional African fit that the contestants were expecting.
Think a little bit more glamour as opposed to natural.
And this line, think a little more glamour as opposed to natural, I think that quote is a good place to start here. Different articles of African clothing have always intertwined with the wider diaspora, with people of varying backgrounds having connections to different time periods with different pieces. For example, the dashiki's presence in the States came up in the 1960s in the midst of the Black Party's reign, up to 2015 wearing it with brown joggers and foam posits.
Dude became an African randomly for a year. A random nigga. That nigga not African.
Kente in particular is what I see the most, which if you didn't know is colorful fabric from the Ashanti region in Ghana. It is seen as one of the first materials people think of when describing Africa as a whole continent. From the graduation stoves that tons of black graduates were on stage, to the hat seen on all the black Twitter memes and more. At least here in America, these pieces are used as a direct representation for the pride and recognition of one's blackness, for better or for worse. But there lies a certain disconnect. Kortrizzi proceeds to show another clip of a guy telling a white model that she do a traditionally African look with head wraps and everything. And with this being from the same show, it gives me the impression that wearing our culture in a non-traditional or expected setting serves as proper grounds for ridicule. Take NFL fans, for example. Jeremiah Owusu-Krama is a 24-year-old Browns player of 3 years, and in that time has already managed to do great things with his resources. In the 23-24 season, he started wearing traditional African fits with inspiration from different countries such as Senegal, Nigeria, and Ghana. And in February of this year, he was crowned GQ's most stylish NFL player. I opened up the comments of this post, and the top comment I see on my phone is, "Do he have regular clothes though?" And "Bro really thinks it's still Halloween." To the people that think like this, here's my question. Why is it that someone of their culture that wears their traditional clothing is the one to get criticized and shamed, but politicians can wear kente taking a knee during June of 2020, mind you, and that was okay for some people? It's giving Principal Brown from the one episode from Gumball.
Swag, rap music,
What the what?
piercings, YOLO, hashtag, MP3, tweets, selfies, skinny jeans, LOL.
In all seriousness, I think both scenarios can be attributed to the idea that Africa, or blackness as a whole, is a monolith, and that's simply not true. If I were to drive down to a city next to me, I guarantee I'd come across completely different accents and terminology. The idea that the second biggest continent in the world, or blackness in general, is expected to fit in this very narrow box is foolish at best and a sickness at worst.
I would say that it is misinformed, and it's also sickness. Like there's a lot of people who have a colonized mindset. Like we associate everything high class and righteous with European and whiteness, and then we associate things that are lower class and lesser as being black. Like in football, for example, like a lot of people will play for England and France, this understanding the abuse they're gonna endure because that's the dream that's been fed to them since they were kids. Yeah. You're not that guy until you've played for England. You're not that guy until you've played for France. Even with everything that's gonna come with it. So once we switch that mindset to truly take what's ours and be proud of it, that's when I think we're gonna see a difference.
So earlier in this video I established that I haven't really been tapped into the game of basketball other than the occasional meme or championship game, and that largely remains true to this day. Ever since April 28, 2012, I've never been able to look at the sport the same. However, there is yet another example of xenophobia, this time stemming from the Olympics. So basically, Team USA and South Sudan's first exhibition match ended with 101-100, with the States securing the win by LeBron's game shot. Keep in mind, the States won, and twice as I was first writing the script down, the Olympics are over at this point. But similar to the World Cup, I guess it's just not enough to let people make it. Gilbert Arenas, former NBA player, got on video to say some of the most disrespectful and ignorant comments I've heard in a while. Let me just read some of the things he said to you. Saying random words for tribes, claiming Joel Embiid was throwing for his cousins, dubbing the team as the Cool Runnings team, suggesting for the team to switch jersey colors because he thought the images he were looking at was black and white. This is what we're working with here. These insults exude the energy of a lunchroom roast session in middle school, with the extent of picking any opening to strike inspires low blows, cheap shots, Mickey Mouse. The way that Arenas says these things, from referencing Cool Summers to throwing strays at Joel Embiid, and even how long he went on that rant, it reminds me of a point Crockett made a while back on his PewDiePie video.
You could tell from the way that shit rolled off his tongue, that shit was like second nature to him. He obviously comfortable with saying it around somebody. The way that man said that shit too, like I don't even think the Ku Klux Klan is using that much force when they're saying the word. Like god damn, that man had passion when he said the word. And the fact of the matter is, this ain't the first time he used this shit, and it's definitely not gonna be the last, judging how easily that shit rolled off his tongue this time.
There was an amount of confidence to these comments that let me know that not only was he comfortable speaking like this in general, but for whatever reason, no one within his environment or upbringing decided to criticize or contest him on this, or at least not enough to stop him. The president of the South Sudanese Basketball Federation, Noel Deng, made such a mature and level-headed response for the stuff that was said, using the hate as a teaching moment. I think the craziest part about this whole thing is the spectacle of the nation becoming this close to beating Team USA. For context, South Sudan gained independence in 2011. Not only that, but this was the men's basketball Olympic debut for the nation. For South Sudan to be as new as they are in more ways than one, and still create that amount of pressure for the team with 4 straight gold medals, is that not enough to be somewhat impressed? I think this irks me more due to the nature of the sports industry, specifically the culture of recruitment and the long-time mental health of these black athletes. Talking about shifting leftover shoes from America with the amount of exploitative actions in the industry, watch FC's video if you want more detail on that. The amount of effort that various African countries have put towards introducing and expanding onto more American-centered sports, to see some of the reactions and that this is still happening in 2024, it's pretty disappointing.
Well, face value, my first thought was Gilbert Arenas is an idiot for what he said. But then when you really think about it, Gilbert Arenas is a representative, you could say, of a lot of people who are ill-informed and think that way. It's a sickness that can only be cured. It's a mental sickness that can only be cured with education and understanding things better. And I mean, just understanding South Sudan and Sudanese people have always been known for athleticism and height. So to be surprised that South Sudan is actually doing things in the Olympics is kind of disrespectful in a way. And seeing the score, they only lost by one point. You act like they're
got blown out.
Yeah, you act like they lost by 20 or 30 or something, which means that they're a team to be taken serious, and to not show that respect is just foul and wrong.
Yeah, it's crazy because yesterday while I was writing the script, I looked up the South Sudanese team. Apparently they got blown out by the US, by like 20 points. So it's not even like a, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think Sudan they give it like 20 years, because mind you, they haven't even been a country for 20 years.
Yeah,
they're 13 years old. Give it 20 years, that team is more experienced. For the first time in forever, I think Africa is going to be swinging heavy in the Olympics as far as basketball goes. The talent has always been there. There's current and past NBA legends that are from Africa or of African descent. Giannis and Joel Embiid, for example, and Serge Ibaka. So it's only a matter of time. I think it would be cool to see a comeback home kind of movement where we see African players actually represent their countries of origin, and not just basketball and the World Cup and in other sports too. But I feel that statement they made that first game against the US, I like that, and I think we need to keep, as Africans, we need to keep making those statements. And if the respect is not given, we'll demand and take it.
I wanted to end this off though with the mention of a certain phenomenon in the past half decade or so. There's this TikTok of a guy joking about his struggle as a dark skin back in 2016 before the Great Shift. 2016 was a battle, and I can attest to this. It was just a light-skinned Odell Beckham Jr. sponge cut with the original Cantu formula. Light-skin versus dark-skin videos were all over YouTube. 2016 was a bad year. The only reason y'all still gas it up is because of the music. But this event, this Great Shift, was a transitional period. Suddenly there was less blatant colorism, at least towards black men, and around the same time African culture was being exposed to a lot more people. When I first showed this on my story a few months ago, my homie that I interviewed directly attributes this to the Black Panther movie in 2018. This box office juggernaut that truly attempted and succeeded in uniting the culture globally.
Yeah, people, I hear this discourse on like Twitter and TikTok a lot. People think that like they call it the Great Shift of when like being African became cool mainstream. I think it happened when in 2018 when Black Panther came out. I remember my experience. I actually got to see that movie opening weekend with two of my best friends, and that kind of changed everything. After that, the wave of Afrobeats in 2019 started, and for the first time in a long time, it's actually cool to be African mainstream in America. Like the last time I think somebody like this was popping was like Akon when he was going on his run in the 2000s, but that's when I think the switch happened.
This is not to talk about Black Panther in particular, but rather what the film's impact represents. I want you to think about this for a second, about the angles I took throughout the video. The idea of culture, the examples I used, and how our food, clothing, and performance are being ridiculed, just for these very same things to be used for profit, for popularity, for commerce. Is this starting to sound familiar? I alluded to the type of conversation stemming from Black people participating in these issues, specifically arguing points between different types of the diaspora. And I can't stress this enough that I'm speaking from my experience and my reference points. Whichever sides from whichever cultural background you choose, the cause of this always comes down to... Can I get a drum roll, please? Colonialism. It's always colonialism. Let's not even get into the bigger details on why Africa and Blackness as a whole as a monolith is foolish. But one example right off the bat, the state of hip-hop today. Look at how much the art form has changed in the public eye in the past 50 years. From a prerogative and transgressive farce to be reckoned with, to blatant vultures with no respect for the music using Sharingan on popping scenes like Atlanta to make a few hits, only to completely switch genres years later. And the same can be applied to rock and roll. If you can't tell me who Chuck Berry, Ike Turner, or Fats Domino is and claim that Elvis did everything for rock and roll, you're simply wrong. The point isn't about the specifics, but more so the cycle of culture being extracted and retracted when its monetary worth is gone. It really comes down to ignorance, intentional or not. The Black community has an issue with identifying our issues through small individualistic targets, and not from small interconnected systemic problems that inform many of our financial, social, and political positions, whether positive or not. And while we're still actively engaging in more meaningful conversations in 2024, we need to take the time to really reflect on not only where our prejudices stem from, but how we can personally deconstruct those harmful behaviors.
Just one last thing to conclude this. Like I said earlier, follow me on Instagram at Thorough Made It. That's all one word, THURRL, Made It. And I'd like to give a shout out to my homie 717 DC Amber. He's a Dominican American artist based in Central Pennsylvania, and he's one of the most talented people I know. Stream his song Cry right now out on all streaming platforms, and he's definitely somebody. Like, I don't endorse a lot of people musically if I don't actually like the song and listen to it on my own time, but he's definitely one of them ones that you gonna say you wish you was a fan of his before he started doing crazy numbers and blew up. Shout out to you, homie.
He definitely, I'll put his stuff in the description too, like his,
yeah,
specifically his production, like his
production is crazy, and
yeah,
he can do different things with his production. I'm looking forward to his upcoming EP, and as far as things, Thorough season 1 on the way, and that's all I have to say. Thanks for having me, bro.
No problem. Yep. Yes, sir. All right, we're cut. We're done with this, bro. All right, let's see this.
Yeah.
Hi, so it's been a while for those who've seen my stuff before. A lot's happened this year, too much for me to get into at the moment, but I wanted to come back with something different, with a topic that's bugged me for years at this point, and with a different look while I get my new visuals done. Specifically with the presentation, and I know a few people that are shocked by this if you know me. So if you made it this far, I won't ask you to subscribe right away, but I'd really appreciate if you left a comment at least. Comments give me more insight and info on how to improve my videos, especially with me trying out a new medium of sorts. I also have a few other videos you can check out on my channel just to get a clearer picture of the stuff I make. I also have a server, and I plan on doing a few community related events like movie nights and games, so the link is in the description in case you're interested. All of my socials, Luham0 unless stated otherwise, are also in the description. You can also check out Ian and December's socials in the description as well. Other than that, that's pretty much it. I can't believe I'm doing this on camera. Okay, bye.